Today, I'm thrilled to have the one and only Schuyler Samperton join me. I'm a bit of a fangirl, and you're going to learn so much from this episode. We cover a ton of design lessons, all from Schuyler's one of a kind perspective. For example, how to incorporate inherited items into your home, how mixing styles and eras creates the layers of personality that I know you're looking for, how dark wood that, sometimes feels a bit outdated can be used in unexpected ways, why scale matters, creative ways to use textiles, and making light fixtures the focal point of a room. Like I said, it's pretty packed. Plus, Schuyler shares insights into her own fabric and wallpaper line, which is gorgeous, and gives us tips on mixing and matching patterns. Don't forget, you can watch this episode on YouTube to see the photos that we reference throughout the conversation, or you can see them on the show notes page of this episode on our website, slowstylehome.com. Just click on podcast and you'll get there. Okay, let's go. Schuyler Samperton, welcome to the Slow Style Home podcast.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Xandra. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really excited about this conversation. I want to start off talking kind of big picture philosophy and approach to get into your creative mind a little bit. I have three principles of design that I use a lot in what I teach, and these are about mindset and attitude and approach. And they are, just for people listening, if you're not as familiar, life informed style, meaning from a practical standpoint, you have to take into consideration the realities of your daily life.
Exactly.
And that your life story is what you'll draw from to create a home that's very you, right? Style evolves is the second one, meaning to develop your eye, you really have to get hands on. You have to practice things. You have to move things around. You have to paint. You have to move a rug. You have to try things out. And then finally, I've really come to believe that your style reflects your values. So what you're spending money on and what you're giving space to in your home says something about you and what you value.
That's so true.
It could be environmentally, it could be about generosity, interpersonal relationships, that kind of thing. So I have talked way too much. I want to hear from you. What is your mindset? What is your approach or philosophy? And do you have anything to add to those or maybe disagree with?
I would say your number two is very important. They're all
Okay.
important, but when you spoke about number two, I feel like a lot of times people get very stuck in design
Mhm.
and they become unwilling to try new things.
Mhm.
You mentioned introducing new pieces, and I feel like a lot of times people get paralyzed with that. They
Yeah.
don't know what to do. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that's very important when you're designing and even when you're living is to be open to change and
Mm.
open to new things and not feeling panicked when something new comes into your house. I had wonderful parents who died 18 days apart from each other and
Oh,
suddenly left me with quite a bit of furniture and
yes.
objects. And I was living in LA at the time in a very small one bedroom apartment. And I just knew that one day I was going to live somewhere where I'd be able to use the things. And
Yeah.
then this house in Connecticut, where I am right now, came into my life a few years ago. And I was so
Oh,
grateful that I kept everything. And I
yes.
finally had a place to put it. And
Right.
that sort of leads into number three, your value
Yeah.
comment. I found a way to make these pieces work in a way that my parents had, they'd use the things differently. For
Right.
example, let's say there were five things in one room. In this house, I broke them up and scattered them.
Right.
And it's so nice to be able to live with these things that mean something to me and see them in a new light.
Oh,
And I'm
right.
also a believer in using things that you've collected over the years. I've never been a fan of, okay, let's just empty the house. We're going to move to a new one and get all new furniture. Things and objects mean a lot to me, and they really inform how I design. I
Yeah.
believe in making sure that you've got your own personality in a space. That's another thing that I see sometimes that sort of makes me sad when you go into a space that is what I call overly decorated, where
Mhm.
it's got no vestige of personality or a
Mhm.
reflection of the client's own
Yeah.
life. Um,
Right.
I always tell people when I first meet with them for a design job, I'm the type of decorator that wants it to look like you didn't have a decorator.
I know.
So
It's
you
funny
have
coming from a person working in interior design to say, don't make it look decorated.
yeah, I want it to look like it's them, but
Yes.
that they have really good taste. I want it to look like they've collected these things over the years, and that not everything is symmetrical, not everything is a pair, not every fabric matches
In
perfectly.
color.
That's
And so what I think you do so beautifully is mix things together, is make everything go together in very unexpected ways. And so that's really what I want to spend the bulk of our time talking about. I'm going to pull up a slide deck of your work. Let's start with this
great.
one. The reason why I'm picking this one to start with is because in the back, there's a piece of needlepoint, and it's actual needlepoint. It's huge, by Lisa Borgnes Girmonti. And I had her on the show several years ago and then saw that your home was in her book,
Right.
which, by the way, is one of my all-time favorite design books. It's called Novel Interiors. And so
She's the best. She's
I
one of
had
my
to like
closest
reach out to
friends.
you. Yeah, we're like, oh my gosh, you love Lisa. I love Lisa. This is a needlepoint, like I said, and it's supposed to look like one of those old-fashioned samplers from the 1800s.
Right.
And it says, when you grow up, will you be a plastic, smooth divinity, or choosing age and softened grace, reveal your life upon your face? And all of hers are very tongue in cheek like that.
So clever.
Yeah, yeah, love it. But okay, now let's talk about the room as a whole. This is a great example to me of how you've really captured the essence of something and taken that essence and expanded it out to create this all-encompassing experience.
So this house is amazing. It belongs to a friend of mine and was actually the guest house of Rudolph Valentino. And it's up
Ooh.
in the Hollywood Hills. Guest house implies that it might be on the small side, which this house is not. This room in particular was a pass through.
Mm,
It has an enormous skylight, so it gets flooded with
mm,
just really beautiful light.
mm.
And we were thinking of how best to use it. And so we decided to bring in this pair of deco chairs and
Yeah.
mix it with that incredibly cool floor lamp
Yeah.
and make it just like a cozy spot where you could come in and read and just curl up on the floor. And Lisa's piece is, I would say, the centerpiece
Yeah, the
of the
anchor
room.
for sure.
And I just love the mix of this. It was easy to use kind of rich, dark fabrics because of all the light. And
Right.
I don't know, it just, I like how quirky it is.
Yeah.
We decided obviously not to go themey with all of the sort of Moroccan touches that you see in the architecture. And we went against that and just did a huge mix of different eras and styles. And I think the unifying factor here are the rich colors that we
Yes.
use.
It's interesting because it still has that sort of Medina vibe to it, but you've got these elements like the mid-century modern lamp and then this what would be a nod to like the 1800s in America. It's just it's such a great mix.
Thank
This is
you.
another one. So many people have a brown couch that's 20 to 30 years old and they think
Right.
it's ugly and they're trying to cover it up. And I suppose one could say this might be one of those couches, but wow, does it look fantastic in this
Oh,
room. So
thank
what was
you.
tell us, why does this work? Tell us a little bit
So
about who it's for.
this is another house in California, and it was designed for a young family. They had two small boys, and this was their hang room. So this was like their playroom where they watch TV. There's a bank of built-in desks where they could come and do their
Ah,
homework.
yeah.
And in here, I wanted to have a nod to the surf culture in LA. They
Mhm,
live quite close to the beach, so
mhm.
that was the choice behind doing the series of surf related photos,
Yeah.
but also give it that little boy feel. The sofa is actually corduroy,
Yeah.
so it's pretty durable. It was easy for them to go flop on it and have all their friends over, and nothing got damaged. And then we added the Pharaoh and Ball wallpaper to really add like a pretty punchy backdrop. I love
Right.
the way it works with the photos. And then we've got the fabric lampshade to just keep a little pop of red in there. And then it was what I would call a mix of a traditional stripes, corduroy, plaids, but then you've got a little sprinkling of California in there too.
It's such a great mix of California beach and then In the Woods Cabin.
Right.
And also, I just want to point out there's a whole bowl of old baseballs that
Yes.
is, I mean, that this is why it's, you don't have to have a lot of money to decorate. That is such a sweet touch. And then here's another favorite of mine. So lots going on here. It's so layered. You've got a pattern, a very tight patterned wallpaper on the walls. You've got a like a Roman style shade coming down. You've got this gorgeous lantern ceiling fixture that looks antique. You've got what looks to be an antique chair. It looks like maybe a Persian rug with maybe some sort of, actually, that box that's there, that trunk could be Chinese or it could be American. I'm not sure. And then this etched
Yeah, it's
mirror.
almost like a big Venetian mirror.
Yeah. So what was going on here? What were you trying to capture? What was the environment you were creating?
So this is very representative of my philosophy of not tossing everything.
Okay.
This was a project that I did in Santa Barbara for a client that I've worked with on 5 projects. And since he loved everything that we've gotten over the years, the directive here was to integrate as much as we possibly could.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that it's in Santa Barbara, but as you can see, there's no kind of beachy elements
No.
whatsoever in
Right.
this entire space. I will point out the things that we reused.
Okay.
The lantern that you mentioned, the large Moroccan lantern, the
Yeah.
mirror, the red trunk he got on his own. It came from Tony Duquette's
Oh.
sale,
Oh, wow.
and he loves it. So that's got some gravitas.
Yes.
And the rug that it's sitting on,
Yeah.
and the burnt bamboo table.
Oh, yeah, there's a
So
little side table that's just darling next to the couch with a cool looking lamp on it, by the way.
this is a perfect example of reusing pieces that he'd had
Yeah.
in a different way. And this was probably originally intended to be a second bedroom. So the
Okay.
sofa it's pull out
Oh,
comfy sofa, sleeper
yeah.
sofa, but we reupholstered it. And the wallpaper that you see is one of ours from our collection. We
Thought
wanted to
so.
make this more like a little study, a little
Yeah.
cozy den.
Yeah.
And so we chose our pattern Delphine. It is, as you mentioned, like a tight pattern. It's got a little pops of a corally red and a green. And then I loved using those 2 pillows to bring out the colors in the wallpaper. And then
Mhm.
he's not afraid of mixing styles and eras.
Right.
And the base of that mid-century lamp really brought like a nice pop of color.
Oh,
And so
absolutely.
and I love that chair. That chair is so pretty.
It
It's got
is.
the smoky lavender upholstery
I thought
on
so. I
the
thought it looked
seat back.
lavenderish. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's definitely an unusual color combination in here, but one that I think works really well. It doesn't look overly decorated. It just looks like you have
Yeah.
a bunch of cool things and threw them all together in the same room.
Right.
And I love the way it turned out.
One of my favorites for
Thank
sure.
you.
All right, let's get into some more like specific details. Dark wood has a reputation, a connotation of being grandmotherly, right? A little bit
Mhm.
fussy, a little bit outdated. And I think really well in many of your projects in
Thank
ways
you.
that are a little bit more unexpected. And this is a great example. This is a powder room with fabulous wallpaper. It's teals, turquoises, some moss greens, and then there's some molding down at the bottom half or maybe quarter of the wall that's this beautiful blue that picks up from the wallpaper. So it's very playful and it's fun and it's vibrant. And so you could think, oh, then I must go with all white, everything else in the room. So you've got the white
Right.
sink, but then I can see somebody going, oh, I need a white framed mirror and I need a white little table to put the flowers on or whatever. And you've done the
Mhm.
opposite. You've gone with dark wood, a dark wood mirror, this antique dark wood, like 3-tiered small table, and this really cool piece of art that has a very dark background. Why does this work? Like,
I just know what appeals to me.
yeah.
And I love
Okay.
old English country houses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I tend not to create rooms that feel too antiseptic. So
Okay.
even in the case of this powder room, um, or bathrooms in general, I like to have some elements that ground them and make
Uh-huh.
them feel warm.
Mhm.
In this case, I certainly could have gone with a white wainscot and kept it very clean. But I wanted it to have some character. And so
Mhm.
that's where I think the woods come in. I think that they inherently give warmth to a space.
Yeah.
And the piece of art, I think, adds to that kind of exoticism that I love. The lily pad print of the wallpaper, I think, is just so over the top and
Yeah.
cool. And I
Right.
love the colors. And it just seemed to me like I could see that in a drawing room somewhere in England, some
Totally.
fabulous kind of wild wallpaper that's just got great art in dark frames. It just, I don't know, it just feels cozy and
Yeah.
super inviting to me.
And that the table looks to be an antique, which I think also is
Yes.
such a nice that talk about collecting over time, and that's a look and a feel that you wanna get. That table does that for that
Right.
room so well.
So
And
it takes it out of just being a powder room.
yeah. Yeah,
And
right,
you've got one foot in like a library,
right,
so
right.
I'm giving as much cozy feel as you can to a bathroom.
Exactly. And here are 2 more great examples. I just love the dark woods that you've used in these rooms that, again, unexpected. You've got this very poppy, wide striped, blue and white stripe that could go nautical. What's going on here?
So the directive for this project was an English professor goes to and drops acid.
That's what I'm talking
Directive.
about.
Yes.
That's what I wanna hear. I wanna
Yes.
hear the story. That's
So
fantastic.
it was supposed to be grounded in tradition,
Yeah.
but with a little bit of an organic twist.
Oh.
Um, so I just love this brutalist cabinet.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I love the way it plays off the simple lines of the chair that's next to it with that great House of Hackney velvet.
Yes.
And
Oh, I love House of Hackney. Yes.
so in this room, it's got the traditional carpet and the traditional stripe and the traditional House of Hackney fabric.
Mhm.
But the House of Hackney fabric, I think, has a psychedelic element too.
Yeah, it
Um,
does.
the simplicity and organic quality of that bedside table,
Uh-huh.
that takes us over to Big Sur. And then you've got the mix of textiles on the bed through the throw at the foot, and then the wild mismatched pillow combination that we've got
Right.
going. The poster belonged to my client. So it's really kind of, again, a mix of feelings and eras,
Yeah.
and just trying to create something that's a little bit unique and not so predictable and cookie cutter-ish.
Which, of course, you have absolutely achieved. Going back to your sentence of your design directive, an English professor goes to Big Sur and drops acid.
Yes.
The way that this
He
is
came up with that,
working,
by the way. That wasn't my idea.
I love it. The you've got especially the bed, right? The bed feels very proper. It's
Yes.
dark wood. It's got a very simple,
Actually, you
but
know what? That bed
yeah.
is corduroy. It's a garnet colored
Oh
wide
my
wale
gosh.
corduroy. So
Oh my
it reads as dark wood, but it's actually fabric.
Oh, I okay, that sort of changes things.
We've got the wood of the side table, so
Yes,
it's still in
brutalist.
there.
Yeah, it's still in there. Maybe what I was drawn to was just that it was so dark as well. It's so dark
Mhm.
against that very poppy blue and white stripe. It feels formal, more formal, where I feel like stripes are more playful.
Yeah, they
And
can
so you see
be.
the Englishman in there, right? But
Right,
then you see how he's really embracing the California culture through
right,
all of
exactly.
the other items in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I thought this was a great example of why scale matters, and I'll just describe it for people who are listening. There's this huge floor lamp on the left behind a chair. This big lamp to me makes such a statement for the rest of the room, and I want people to be not quite so afraid of going big with something. I feel like we tend to go smaller. Like we buy all of our rugs too small because they're cheaper when they're small, right?
Right.
And we buy other things that are small, especially if there's multiple sizes that something comes in because it's a little bit less expensive. But you are missing such a huge opportunity if you just commit to something big. So talk to us a little bit about this room.
So this was a space, it's an apartment, and it was all white, nondescript, not a lot of architecture to the
Yeah.
space, and zero color.
Okay.
So what we did to make it a little more cozy was we painted the mantle,
Yeah.
which was white.
Is
So
it
we
like a
did,
deep green?
yes. So
Okay.
it's Studio Green by Farrow and Ball, which
Yeah.
is one of my favorite colors to use.
Okay.
You can't see it in these photos, but we also painted the kitchen island and the cabinetry in that
Ah.
color. It's an open plan. So,
Oh,
you
I
know,
see.
it helps the spaces speak to each other and have
Yeah.
some kind of relationship. We also decided to do that one wall in
Mhm.
a really beautiful copper colored grass cloth.
Mhm. I can see that it's
So
textured. I thought maybe it was grass cloth. Yeah.
yeah, so it was nice in that it added a little interest to the wall. Everything was just standard drywall in there, so we wanted to make it a little bit more, give it a little bit more interest in
Mhm.
color and texture. So the floor lamp, I chose that because there's a little bit of an awkward corner
Mhm.
where I needed to put something. It wasn't a big corner, but it definitely needed to have something there. And
Yeah.
we needed light. And I saw this is actually from Restoration Hardware.
Okay.
And it's like a torchiere. So
Yeah.
the shape and the size, the color, the texture, the entire thing was perfect.
Really
Um,
and what is it made out of? It looks
it's made out of
gold.
metal.
Right, metal, sorry,
And
yeah, but
it's
it looks golden.
yeah, it is. It's almost like a kind of a beautiful sort of dull
Mm.
goldy bronze color.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
it's got texture too. It's almost fluted or ribbed. So again, it creates such a grand moment in
Right.
a little corner. And I think is one of the most full elements in the space.
Oh, I
And
agree. I did notice there was no moldings, there was no it looked like maybe it was a home that didn't have that was maybe modern, it didn't have as many architectural details, but you really don't notice that because of everything you've got going on there, and in terms of the 2 shots that show the rest of the room or parts of the other rest of the room,
mhm,
on the left, you see just the feature wall. You don't know that it's a feature wall because you can't see any of the other walls. And on
right.
the right, you say, "Oh, okay." So my question to you is why not do the whole thing in the grass cloth?
So I mentioned it was an open plan.
Oh,
So the kitchen is right on the other side. It's all one big space.
okay.
I feel like it would have been too oppressive to
Yep,
do the entire thing
yep.
in that color because it is so strong.
It's like a
Um,
brick or not brick,
it's
it's
like a
like a
copper.
terracotta. Oh, copper. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And it's a lovely color, but I
Mhm.
didn't want to overdo it because I did want to be aware of where the space is. It is
Yeah,
Santa Barbara. It's we're not in New York City. And
yeah, yeah. Or
so
an
I
English country cottage, right,
so
so yeah, you
so
need
I
some
didn't want it
light.
to be too crazy dark, but I
Yeah.
did want to give it like a little bit of a pop.
This
Thank you.
photo over here, it just shows this really cool table lamp and a couple pieces of art. You see a little bit of the Persian shrug. This, I'm guessing, both the lamp and the table were kind of investment pieces. I'm guessing that they might have cost a good penny.
Table for sure.
Yeah.
The lamp came from Visual Comfort.
Uh-huh.
Um, the piece on the right, that ceramic piece,
Yeah.
he actually commissioned. And
Ooh.
everything in this place is very special to him.
Mhm.
And this scene is what you see when you open the front door.
Oh, I
The
love and I love that it's the front entryway because this is exactly what I think a front entryway can do for a home, which is really introduce people to w- who the person is inside and
right,
what we're about to see and who we're about to meet and the conversations we might have. And so I feel like this really shows that, especially for an entryway, they could have gotten a very typical, just as plain old Parsons table, just regular old lamp, but
big
they,
mirror.
yeah, big mirror, exactly, very typical in an entryway. And I think by choosing things that are so thoughtfully put together as you've done, it just feels so personal. Picked these 3 photos because of all the light fixtures. I love all of them. I have a really hard time finding light fixtures I like in kitchens over islands, and these
Hmm.
look to be really cool ceramic,
Right.
maybe?
Yes.
Fabulous. They've got little some carvings in them, and then the one that's in the bathroom is like a it also looks to me maybe ceramic or enamel,
Yes.
but it's a cone shape, but then it's got this great metal ring at the top, and then this
Hmm.
really fabulous chandelier that's in a lofted space. what does lighting do for a room? Because I think that maybe it's a little bit overlooked as a show-stopping kind of piece or even a centerpiece.
Yes, in these three cases, I think the light fixture is so important because in the case of the bathroom, it's really playing against the simplicity of the shape of the
Yes.
tub.
Yes.
Obviously, the floor gives a little interest with all the pattern, but other than like that space is pretty sleek. And
Yeah.
I felt like that light fixture added a little bit of warmth through.
Oh,
It's almost like a play on something that you'd see in like an old country house. So it's like a kind of a modernized version of that.
it looks
Um,
like a bell. It just looks
yeah,
like it's really beautiful.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And then in the other photograph that's taken from above, it's a
Okay.
two-story space, and we needed to find something that was interesting from the upper level and from down below. And I
Right.
think that that really does the
Describe
trick.
it for us. What are the materials in it?
So this is primarily wood.
Okay.
And then of course the shades add a lot of character to it.
Mhm.
So it's in this piece, for example, I think it's all about scale.
Okay.
And you really needed something that was going to make a statement.
Yeah.
And I feel this is just so enormous that it does just that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And over the kitchen, again, sleek space, a lot of clean, smooth elements, and then the light fixtures, again, with all the texture,
Yeah.
bring a little warmth in.
Yeah, that's right. I think mixing those textures does exactly that. And I don't think it's something you walk into the room and go, "Oh, I love the mix of textures." It's just a feeling. It's a
Right.
feeling of warmth that you get. And then
Yeah, exactly.
I love how you use objects in ways that they aren't necessarily meant to be. For example, in this sweet bar area, you've got these
Oh, yeah.
fabulous bronze sconces with this mirror in between, and then you've got some kind of table, don't know what it is, for the bar because it's completely covered up with a rug and it looks fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Vintage textiles are my favorite thing
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
Um, and so I try to use them as many places as possible. Throw them
Right.
over tables, put them at the end of beds,
Yes.
obviously on the floor, rows on a sofa, just any chance I get, I try
Yeah.
to incorporate
And
antique
these
textiles.
on this fabulous bench in the other picture, you've got it's a wooden bench that's very upright, so it might not
Mhm.
be terribly comfortable, but you've got a series of pillows, and I'm not sure if this is the case or not, but I know that the first killam that I had owned was a pillow. So it was a pillow made from a rug because that was
Mhm.
all I could afford.
There
Yeah.
yeah, that's another mix of vintage fabrics, and
Mhm.
we made a pillow out of a rug fragment, so that's exactly
Okay.
what you're seeing there.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right, let's keep going with this with your obsession with fabrics.
Yes.
I have a den that where I hung a rug on the wall, and I did it because I found the rug when I was at an antique store, and I was redoing my den, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is exactly the feel and the colors and the era that I want for that room." I thought it might be a little small, but I bought it anyway. I got it home. It was too small, and so I hung it on the wall.
That's
I mean,
perfect.
I hadn't intended to hang it on the wall, but it's great on the wall, and I know that's not a new idea, but you do it a lot, and I love how you do it. It gives such a softness and such a cozy layerness, especially to your bedrooms.
Thank you. So these pictures are funny. So the first one is actually a screen
I thought maybe
behind
it was
that.
a painted screen, right? I couldn't tell if it was fabric or not.
Yeah, so that's a really beautiful painted screen. And I love screens too. I think they
Uh-huh.
add so much. And what a great backdrop
Yeah.
against that like super kind of simple linen settee.
And just let me describe for people too, it's a lot of times screens are on the floor, but I think just putting them directly on the wall, if you don't have that kind of floor space, it does make this fantastic backdrop for this one wall. So, okay, go ahead, keep going.
And then the next photo, that's our place in Florida.
Oh, okay.
And this is 650 square feet.
Oh,
And really, what I wanted to do here was create something that felt like Florida. I'm a big believer in creating spaces that reflect where you live.
I
And
love
I'd
that.
like to have a sense of place.
Lo-
So, what you see here is a rug that I hung on the wall. And it's not a huge piece, but it was big enough to create some drama.
Mhm.
Um, I think this was, I don't know, a few $100s. It really
Wow.
wasn't a lot. And I think a nice loose, relaxed. We're on
Yeah.
vacation. We're in Florida. It's
Yeah.
an amazing opportunity to bring in a ton of color. And the linens here were just a nice mix of pattern. And I do have to point out that piece that you see towards the foot of the bed
Uh-huh.
is literally my prom dress that I still wear.
You are kidding. You still wear, okay, now you've just made a lot of enemies. Are you kidding me? You still wear
It's not
that?
about the fit. It was skinny straps and just a little bit fitted in the top and then a complete loose,
Oh,
easy dress to wear. But
oh,
I know
good.
it's like hand painted silk
Oh,
and it's a very cool dress. I still wear it, but I love it
that's
that it's
amazing.
my prom dress.
Oh, you were a very chic high schooler then, that you had
Yes,
that
I
kind
had a
of
very chic
style.
mom. So
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
she helped
I
pick that
got
one
it.
out.
Okay. And yes, the pinks, the hot pinks and the bright oranges that you see in the bedroom it does feel like Florida without it hitting you over the head and screaming Florida.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. And then the Suzani in the next photo is
Yeah,
gorgeous.
well,
That looks antique, is it?
it
Or
is. I love
okay.
Suzanne's. That's
Mhm.
just, I've always loved them. And again, that brought so much drama to that space. It has really
Mhm.
high ceilings and it just, to me, just creates the most beautiful backdrop. And the rest of the room, white walls, which is totally fine because you've got this huge, like big splash of color behind the bed that
Right.
really defines the space.
Right. And then the
And
last one I think is interesting because a lot of people don't put beds in front of windows, and I don't know if you did this out of necessity or not, but I think this works really well with the curtains closed. First of all, you need some privacy in a bedroom anyway, but
well,
it gives
it's
so
actually
much
not a
depth.
window.
Oh, you
That
just did it.
that is purely used as a backdrop.
Oh my gosh.
Yep, there's
Even
no window
better.
there.
Even
So
better.
that was a rug that belonged to my client. And I really wanted to try to reuse as much as I could from his former place. And then it just came to me, why not put it behind the bed? And, you know, like I said, I'd like to reuse as much as possible. So some things that were in the primary bedroom now got moved to this guest room in a
Right.
different way. Different. That rug was on the floor in
Right.
his other space, and now it's hanging on the wall.
And for people listening, it's pleated in a way that a curtain would be. So it looks
Yeah,
like a curtain.
exactly.
It doesn't drape like any of the other examples on this in this slide deck of how Schuyler uses fabric on the wall. It looks like it is covering a window, and I think that makes that room look it's enveloped in fabric, and therefore it looks really rich and cozy
Thank you.
yeah. So let's keep going with fabric because you, as I indicated, you have an obsession with fabric, which has led you to start creating your own fabric line and wallpaper line. So I just wanted to share a few of these. Um,
Thank you.
so you can find all this stuff on Schuyler's website. You've got the tiger stripe pillow with this red striped couch with the pastoral mural on the wall. It's
Isn't that cool?
fantastic.
I
Yeah.
didn't design this space, but we just loved it. But I love the way that she used like the e-cot because there's
Yeah.
an e-cot running through that Bengal stripe pattern of
Got it.
ours,
Yeah.
which is just juxtaposed with that sort of traditional mural. And then you've got that wild tiger print
All right.
pillow. I think she just did such a good job. It looks so cool together.
This is
Yeah.
such a great I love a tablecloth, and I'll just say that I often, when I'm traveling especially, I will buy if it's a designer I really like or a printmaker that I really like,
Hmm.
I'll buy a few yards of fabric, and I don't even, because 'cause I'm lazy, I don't even hem it, I just use it as a tablecloth.
Oh
I
yeah.
just let it fray. Yeah,
That's such a good tip.
yeah, yeah.
This is in our
Oh,
barn,
sorry.
and this is our celandine pattern,
Yeah,
like super splashy, big scale floral,
right.
um, and just I think is adds a lot of uh, fun to a table.
Totally, totally. This is a
Thank
great
you.
so now you can really see the Shalimar on the left is in this dark, kind of almost chocolatey brown background, and then on the right, it's in a cream background. So really, they look like very different fabrics with the same
Totally
pattern.
different.
Yeah, yeah.
So the original Shalimar was inspired by these Indian panels that my mom gave me.
Mhm.
This has kind of a loose all over pattern, but like you said, the effect is so different depending on the colorway.
The last couple photos show both one of your fabrics and your wallpapers. So we've got the Pendleton fabric on the left and or on the chair, sorry, and the Floriana wallpaper behind it, and great use of stripes and botanicals together. I
Oh,
love it.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Pendleton stripe was one of the first patterns that we released. And I really love it because if you look closely, it looks like it's almost got a little stitch line
It
running
does look
through
like that.
it.
Yes, yes.
So it's not just a standard like two color stripe. There's
Mm,
a little bit of interest there. And we did that in a lot of colorways. And it's a very popular one for us because
yeah,
I love stripes with florals and paisleys. It's really easy to mix in. And that
right,
was one of the things that I wanted to do when we launched the collection. Because I'm a designer, I'm familiar with how patterns work together. And I wanted to be
right.
able to create a collection that was useful for people coming in that could shop within the line. So
Yes.
the colorways are compatible.
I actually had that experience going through your website. It was like, "Oh my gosh, these all of these things go so beautifully together." And this is I'm gonna end with this one. This is my absolute favorite combination, I think, in
Thank
this
you.
bedroom. So you've got the firefly wallpaper, which is a very small, it looks hand sketched, kind of
Mhm.
repeating pattern, like sketched out squares. And then you've got this gorgeous, almost chinoiserie bird like fabric on the headboard. And then you've got these great pillows. Yeah.
That was a great mix too. This was actually in a catalog, um, and they had used our Firefly wallpaper with the Caledonia headboard and then used a great mix of their
Mhm.
vintage textile pillows. And I
Yeah.
think it was really successful the way that they combined all of the patterns. So
Yeah.
Caledonia is that's our best seller.
Okay.
And I don't know, it's so funny. You never know what's going to take off, but that's very popular for us. So we actually offer it in wallpaper and performance as well.
Okay.
And I guess people just love like the punch. And again, it's another one of those patterns that has such a different effect depending on the color that you choose.
Exactly, and some colorways make it feel like a modern version of kind of a nod to chinoiserie, and some feel a little bit
Right.
more traditional, and then you've got some that are playful, so it's definitely one of my favorites, I
Right.
can
That's so
see.
true. We've got one colorway that's called Imperial that has almost like an electric turquoise
Ah,
background
yeah,
with a
yeah,
little bit of coral and a little bit of plum. And one of my favorite things to do is to play around with color combinations and not just do the same standard combinations that you
right,
see so often.
right.
That's another thing that I wanted to try to do with the line. And since moving to Connecticut, I'm trying to create things that work in this location.
Okay.
And so we just are introducing a brand new colorway of Caledonia that will be coming
Oh,
out shortly.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
great, great. This has been so much fun.
Oh,
It's
thanks, Sandra. It's been
so
so
many
nice to
great
speak with
oh,
you.
good. So many great lessons and inspiration from this conversation, and really an honor to have you on the show. So
Oh my
thank you so
gosh,
much for
thank you
your
for having me.
time.
You're
Yeah.
so nice. It's been great.
Oh, good.